Over 2,500 years ago, a man claimed he was taken into the heavens, not by angels, but by something that modern eyes would call a machine. His name was Ezekiel, and what he saw was astonishing. Fire, wheels within wheels, thunder like rushing waters, and a throne that moved as if alive. To tradition, it became a vision of God's glory. But if we read it with open eyes, we may find something very different. This is a clear trace that ancient beings walked the earth, and that prophets were abducted by powers not of this world. But there is more to this story than they want you to know. And I'm here to tell you exactly what they have been hiding from you, and why. Are you prepared? The riverbank is silent, yet the weight of exile hangs like iron in the air. A priest of Jerusalem, torn from his temple and thrust into Babylon, records a date with unnerving precision. In the 30th year, the 4th month, the 5th day. This is not legend, it is record. By the waters of the Chaldeans, despair carves lines in the exiles' faces. The city lies in ruins, the sanctuary burned. In this world of loss and foreign dominion, visions of Elohim break in and refuse to fade. A whirlwind from the north, a great cloud, and fire folding in on itself with brightness all around. The words strain to contain the sight: storm, fire, brilliance, energy looping back on itself, dangerous and alive. From its heart emerge 4 living beings. This was their appearance. They had the likeness of a human. Yet each body bears 4 faces: human, lion, ox, eagle, and wings. When they move, they surge like flashes of lightning. The ancient Near East adds an echo: colossal throne guardians in stone, the Lamassu. Here, however, the guardians move. They synchronize as if operating in formation, fire coursing among them like lamps, sparks bursting outward as though drawn from a hidden engine. Beside each stands a wheel, no ordinary wheels, a wheel within a wheel. Motion in any direction without turning, they went straight forward. They did not turn as they went. Their rims rise full of eyes all around. The mainstream reads omniscience. The image also fits a surface dense with nodes, jewels, rivets, or luminous apertures arranged in an array. Why would a poet of exile speak in the language of machinery? Above the living beings and the wheels stretches a platform, the firmament, a solid span over their heads. Upon it appears the likeness of a throne, like sapphire, and above the throne the likeness as the appearance of a human. For generations, this has been read as the glory of Yahweh enthroned. Another angle remains: a central command seat rising over a complex of engines, radiant beings functioning as living supports, or mechanisms rendered in the only vocabulary available. Even the lexicon signals strangeness. The text names glowing metal, often rendered electrum or amber, as part of the brightness. The sound that follows is not a whisper, but a roar, the voice of Shaddai, the noise of many waters, a tumult like an army on the march. The prophet collapses, and when I saw, I fell on my face, and I heard a voice speaking. Collapse becomes the final gesture, sensory overload, awe, terror, submission to the voice that issues from within the structure. The account balances on the edge of interpretation. Was this vision meant to reassure exiles that sovereignty moves beyond ruined walls, the glory of Yahweh untethered from geography? A mystical initiation, heaven opened to a priest cast adrift, or the first record of an encounter with engineered craft, wheels, lights, fire, command, transcribed by a witness grasping for words. Commentators call it allegory, mystics call it ascent, psychology calls it trauma transfigured by vision, yet the text refuses to blur its concrete edges. A wheel within a wheel, rims full of eyes, non-turning motion, fire folding into itself, glowing metal. If this were only symbol, why preserve it with such specification? Why repeat the geometry twice, here and again when the beings are later identified as cherubim? As though cataloging hardware rather than composing poetry. The vision stands at a crossroads. It is either the supreme symbol of sovereignty, the glory of Yahweh mobile beyond temple and land, or an abduction record preserved in scripture. When a man by a Babylonian canal was seized by forces his world could only call glory. Both readings remain alive in the lines. One, however, was pressed down beneath centuries of allegory. The question lingers in the fire and the wheels. Was this the likeness of Yahweh, or the arrival of powers enthroned above machinery? And why has that question been kept quiet? A single phrase surfaces again, etched into the witness's memory with unsettling clarity. Their appearance and their work was, as it were, a wheel in the middle of a wheel. This is no poetic flourish. It is a report, a rendering of motion that defies standard mechanics. The beings move in any direction without reorienting. The Hebrew wordafin, typically translated as wheel, behaves here like a multi-axis apparatus. Creatures pivot, these do not. They glide forward, untwisting the limits of earthly movement. Their rims rise with intimidating scale, high and awesome, and are full of eyes all around. The poetic instinct may read omniscience, but the sensory tone suggests more. An engineered surface, studded with apertures or luminous nodes, arranged in deliberate precision. The vision leaves room for dual meanings, but it does not soften the detail. The impression given is not of decoration, but of function. Then comes the sound, not chant, not hush, but power. The sound of their wings was like the noise of many waters, like the voice of Shaddai, a tumult like the sound of an army. The language evokes controlled force, an overwhelming output beyond the threshold of ordinary perception. Not metaphor, but thunder that moves the ground. The connection between the beings and the wheels is absolute. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved. For the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. This is not casual coordination. The structure operates in synchronized levels. Living forms and mechanical parts rise, descend, and halt in unified precision. The text names their connection spirit, ruach, not as vague presence, but as animating current, binding movement across parts. A second vision echoes the first. 4 wheels by the cherubim, as if one wheel were in the midst of another. Their whole body and the wheels were full of eyes. When the cherubim stood, the wheels stood. The pattern does not evolve, it stabilizes. The same geometric logic, the same synchronized movement, the same luminous density. Whatever the vision is, it insists on its own mechanics. Tradition sees this as the Merkabah, the mobile throne chariot of Yahweh, robed in the language of glory. That may hold. But the vocabulary stretches further than theology. It mimics the constraints of design, non-turning motion, radial symmetry, distributed awareness, reactive lift. These do not operate like poetic archetypes. They behave like components in a linked system. The prophet's environment offered analogs. Life by the canals of Babylon was shaped by hydraulic engineering, gates, lifts, controlled flows. To hear the noise of many waters was not metaphor, but background. Yet even those machines were earthbound. What the vision records belongs to another scale, wheels layered within wheels, eyes moving without blindness, a command throne carried above it all. Still, the description avoids exalted ambiguity. The geometry is stable, the symmetry is persistent, the motion is mechanical in concept, if not in origin, and above it all sits a form like the appearance of a human, unreachable, radiant, and commanding. Whether this is divine presence rendered in terms of design or a machine witnessed through the lens of the sacred, the ambiguity is preserved with care. No detail is diluted, no symbol excuses the structure, and the structure does not blink. It waits, humming at the edge of vision. The machine of heaven operates with intelligence, alignment, and roar. The linkage is spirit, the voice is thunder, the motion is unrelenting. It may be poetry, but it behaves like system. And what kind of poetry builds such engineering into its song? 4 faces gaze outward from a single body: Adam, Arya, Shor, and Nesher. Human, lion, ox, eagle. This configuration does not blend, it multiplies. The geometry defies natural symmetry, yet the description remains unwavering. Later, the pattern shifts slightly: cherub, man, lion, eagle, but the fourfold axis holds: direction without blindness, vision in every quadrant. Tradition anchors these faces to the cardinal signs of the zodiac: Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio. In Babylon, this wasn't speculation, it was statecraft. Priests, scribes, and astronomers charted heaven with a precision born of empire. Celestial order legitimized earthly rule. Thrones were mapped in stars. Babylon's Mulopin series made the sky a document, constellations cataloged, risings and settings measured, omens inscribed. Within that atmosphere, beings full of eyes reflect more than mysticism. They echo the fixed constellations used to structure calendars, rituals, and political time. Faces become symbols. Eyes become stars. Movement becomes mapping. Yet the system breathes. These are not inert icons. The beings do not drift. They move like flashes of lightning, not metaphor, but description. Even within the astral frame, the language of energy persists. The roar, the fire, the storm do not fade into symbol. They remain active, forceful, near. And the configuration is architectural. 4 beings at the base, movement in 4 directions, platform above them. Above the platform, the throne. The throne bears a likeness as the appearance of a human. This is not a myth drifting in abstraction. It is a structure, tiered, intentional. Symbolic systems rarely require such mechanical logic, but here, motion obeys design. The prophet does not describe vision as pure awe, but as architecture in motion. Layers support a central authority. The symbolic can be read. The functional is felt. The tension is sustained deliberately. Astral readings remain plausible. Eyes as stars, faces as constellations, the firmament as heavenly floor. But the sensory level insists on more. These are not passive signs, they interact. The movement is not metaphorical, it responds, coordinates, lifts. So what remains? A vision straddling 2 worlds, the mystical and the mechanical, the symbolic and the operative, the celestial throne as cosmic blueprint, or as a rendered system, glimpsed by a witness with no modern vocabulary to name what was seen. In Babylon, among tablets and towers, the exiled priest records a vision where stars move like systems and faces multiply like fields of sight. And the silence that follows asks whether this was heaven imagined or heaven observed. Beyond the recurring wheels and radiant forms, a deeper structure begins to take shape. A layered architecture that speaks less of myth and more of system integration. The account doesn't merely repeat, it refines. Each layer reaffirms a pattern: base, motion, interface, control. This is not the language of hallucination, but of a machine mapped in vision. What unfolds is a design hierarchy. At the foundation, entities capable of synchronized movement. Adjacent to them, circular constructs intersecting like gyroscopes, enabling directional freedom without rotation. Above, a hard plane, the firmament, not sky, but platform. And seated atop, a form like a human issuing commands from a throne. These aren't scattered symbols, they are structured tiers linked by function. The text's phrasing intensifies this sense of engineered coherence. And the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels, a union of will and mechanism, suggesting not metaphor but control architecture, not simply presence but operating connection. The components respond not randomly, but with systemic logic. No element acts in isolation. The beings move, the wheels follow. The platform lifts, the throne remains anchored. This is command through nested alignment. Where other accounts might elevate mystery, this one anchors experience in behavior. There is sequence. Lift follows roar. Stillness follows descent. Wings lower. Light dims. The mechanism resets. Even the silence between movements carries procedure. Not the absence of meaning, but a pause in operation. And it is here that the forbidden begins. The vision's precision, its refusal to dissolve into abstraction, challenges traditional thresholds. Not because it denies the divine, but because it dares to describe it in mechanical terms. The prophet doesn't veil what he sees, he enumerates it. Components are tracked, actions are logged. The vision behaves not like a dream, but like documentation. A priest of the temple, trained in sacred protocol, bears witness to something that strains the boundaries of liturgy. His language, while rooted in holiness, bends under the weight of unfamiliar design. He reaches for terms from his world: fire, metal, whirlwind, sound of many waters, yet the structure persists beyond them. Its logic is not symbolic, it is procedural. Its glory is not diffused, it is embedded. Why preserve this level of detail unless it mattered? Why describe a vehicle of the divine with the fidelity of a technical observer? Perhaps this is the true forbidden layer, not just the claim that heaven moves, but the implication that it moves with systems. That sovereignty is enthroned above machinery, that the sacred rides upon precision, and that a witness in exile recorded it all, not to explain it away, but to ensure it could never be unseen. The vision ends, the wheels stop, the roar fades, but the memory remains, structured, ordered, and irreducible. The vision was never erased, but it was managed, not through censorship, but through caution. Long before modern scholarship attempted to explain Ezekiel's account, tradition had already drawn a line around it. This was the work of the chariot, and not everyone was allowed in. Instruction was restricted. Commentaries warned against premature study. Only the worthy, the mature, the initiated were granted entrance. Not because the vision was too obscure, but because it was too precise, too close to something unspoken. The text remained, but its reading was fenced. Later, the vision was rerouted. Mystics reworded it through gates, palaces, and celestial seals. It became ascent literature. What mattered was not what the throne did, but how one approached it. Action gave way to ritual. Mechanics were replaced with protocol. Philosophy then abstracted the structure even further. The throne became first cause. The wheels became principles. The eyes dissolved into metaphysical perfections. The details stayed, but their edge dulled. Geometry faded into allegory. Procedure was translated into hierarchy. Visual culture reinforced the turn. The four faces of the living beings were matched to the four evangelists: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Mosaics and manuscripts made it law. The strange guardians became fixed symbols. Their meaning was mapped, their behavior forgotten. Preachers completed the transformation. Every element found its moral. Wheels became mobility. Eyes, omniscience. Sound, divine voice. Complex motion and interlocked parts were flattened into devotional shorthand. The text's structure remained, but its pressure vanished. Translation aided the shift. Vivid terms became safe phrases. Bright metal became shining light. Spirit in the wheels softened into vague animation. Points along the rims, nodes, apertures, details lost their specificity, not by deceit, but by preference. Symbol was easier, symbol was safer. None of this was sabotage, it was protection. Fear of heresy shaped boundaries, anti-idolatry shaped language, theological caution shaped meaning. These forces preserved the text, but at a cost. The price of survival was the narrowing of interpretation. In time, allegory became the only door left open. Symbol did not coexist with other readings. It replaced them. The detailed descriptions of movement, alignment, coordination, lift, and descent were absorbed as color, not taken as content. Modern tools continued the trend. Historical critical readings framed Ezekiel's vision as literary response to exile. Comparative studies pointed to shared motifs. Psychology named the vision a trauma narrative. Theology guarded transcendence. Kinematics was not welcome at the table. The result, not erasure, but containment. The mechanical path was never banned, but it was never walked. One reading remained possible in theory, but unreachable in practice. A trace route through the orchard that almost no one followed. And yet, the manuscript itself did not change. The sequence still holds. The transport still happens. The verbs still behave like field notes. The system still acts like a system. What changed was the frame allowed to interpret it. The filters, not the text, thinned the vision's force. Behavior was relabeled as metaphor. Description was domesticated. But the vision remains, pressing at the edges. Its coordination endures. Its patterns repeat. If this were merely myth, why preserve such motion? If symbol were enough, why the machinery? The answer lies where the warnings begin, where the orchard is fenced and the thunder is still audible beneath the words. A priest in exile wrote what he saw. The lines survived. And now the question rises again. Why did they tell you this was only metaphor? And what happens if it wasn't? A voice commands, "Son of man, stand upon your feet and I will speak to you." Then comes the surge. The ruach entered and set the prophet upon his feet. The account begins with seizure, not choice. Power presses inward, reconfiguring the human state. This is not distant metaphor. It reads as forced entry. Moments later, the scene escalates. Then the ruach lifted me up, and I heard behind me a great rushing, the noise of the wings of the living beings, and the noise of the wheels. A great rushing, like the voice of Shaddai. The lift arrives with thunder, of wings and wheels. One passage sharpens the physicality. He put forth the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my hair, and the ruach lifted me up between earth and heaven. This is tactile capture. The prophet feels the pull in his scalp, suspended between ground and sky. Then relocation follows. A point-to-point transfer to a gate in Jerusalem, the door of the inner gate that looks toward the north. The itinerary continues. East gate, inner courts, a valley of bones, a very high mountain. Each stop delivers an observation, each observation a message, and always the structure closes. Afterward, the ruach took me up and brought me, in visions of Elohim, into Chaldea to the exiles. Then the vision went up from me. Origin restored. The transport ends. The loop is complete. Call, seizure, lift, tour, mandate, return. This structure repeats with variations throughout the book. Trance state, vision state. These labels aim to frame the event. But the text insists on more than state. It insists on sound, wings and wheels. It insists on force, grasped by hair. It insists on movement, lifted, carried, set down. It insists on location, Jerusalem, Chaldea, specific gates and mountains. These are coordinates, not abstractions. The prophet's affect betrays stress. I went in bitterness, in the heat of my spirit, but the hand of Yahweh was strong upon me. Not mystical calm, but the turmoil of compulsion. Resistance overwhelmed by force. Some read this as sacred instruction. The prophet is moved to witness and to learn. But the system, lift, transport, observation, return, resembles something else. A structured process, precise in its logistics, consistent in its execution. The vision confirms its own mechanics. The same beings and wheels from the opening appear again. The language of command continues. The movement is patterned, repeatable. Here, allegory strains. The details press too hard, the actions too specific. If this is only symbol, it is symbol rendered with mechanical fidelity. Two readings remain: vision state metaphor or literal encounter. Both can stand. Neither erases the other. But one dares a wider implication. This is not only a story of what was seen, it is a record of what was done. A seizure, a lift, a journey, a return. Not silence, not dream. A system, loud, coordinated, deliberate. The question lingers, sharpened but unanswered. If the prophets were taken, then by whom and to what end? Across the horizon of exile, a signal rises and falls, appearance, departure, return. This was the appearance of the likeness of the Kavod Yahweh, and when I saw it, I fell upon my face. The same presence later departs. The Kavod Yahweh moved from the threshold of the house, and still later returns the way it left, from the way of the east, and the earth shone with his kavod. The movement is deliberate, not scattered. The arc is written into the structure of the vision itself. Two readings stand open. One sees heaven's throne in motion, sovereignty unchained from temple and empire, guardians marking the cosmos, wheels and eyes as signs of watchful order, transport as a form of instruction through ecstasy. The other sees a system, intersecting wheels, precise geometry, coordinated stages of motion, bearing a seat and an occupant. In this register, sound is output, light is emission, lift is procedure. The text sustains both readings. The question is not which is permitted, but which accounts for more without breaking the backbone of the story. The details resist dismissal. They went everyone straight forward. They did not turn as they went. A wheel in the middle of a wheel. Their rings were full of eyes. He took me by a lock of my hair. These are not vague impressions, but hard edges, geometry, kinematics, tactile capture, and they are duplicated across visions. Precision repeated is how technical detail survives transmission. If symbol alone were intended, why preserve specifications with such care? The roar first heard by the canal recurs in later transports, the noise of many waters, the tumult of an army. The same living beings and wheels that marked the opening vision flank the journeys that follow. The same command language continues. The ruach animates the prophet. The ruach animates the wheels. It behaves like a single integrated system, not like scattered metaphors stitched together. The experience itself carries the weight of embodiment. The prophet feels the surge of ruach set him upright, hears the rushing sound, is lifted, and once even seized by the hair, detail too specific to belong only to dream. Suspended between earth and heaven, he is carried to named gates and courts, to valleys and mountains, and finally returned to Chaldea. Trance may explain the form, but it must still answer kinesthetics, acoustics, and geography that sound like field notes. The vision borrows from the imagery of empire and cosmos, lamassu carved in stone, star catalogs etched into tablets, but these symbols do not erase the mechanics. The system is used with purpose, to show abominations, to announce judgment, to measure the restoration to come. Motion is not spectacle, but mission. The repeated sixfold sequence, call, seizure, lift, tour, mandate, return, functions as itinerary, not ornament. Seen one way, the moving throne is theophany, kavod Yahweh unbound by walls, judging in departure, renewing in return, watching all through countless eyes. Seen another way, it is memory of contact, engineered mobility, wheels within wheels, noise like rushing waters, a command seat above a platform. Neither cancels the other. Held together, they enlarge the field of meaning. The ark seals the verdict. Manifestation, fire, brilliance, descent, and a priest collapsing before it. Departure, kavod withdrawing from a corrupted sanctuary and halting on the mountain. Return, kavod entering from the east to fill the house. If symbol, it is executed with the precision of a specification. If encounter, it is interpreted through covenant drama. In both cases, the testimony insists on reality, experienced, recorded, preserved. The record also carries consequence. A throne that moves declares sovereignty unconfined by geography. A system that lifts and sets down preserves memory of contact between mortal and power. In either frame, the prophet falls to the ground before intelligence beyond measure. What remains thinly veiled is the implication. The prophets were not only inspired, at least one was extracted, taken, carried, instructed, returned. The extractors presented as gods, enthroned above wheels within wheels, roaring in thunder and fire. The ancient world called them Elohim. Today another name clings to them, the Anunnaki. So the ruach took me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the kavod Yahweh filled the house. If that line is ritual, the vision ends at the altar. If it is also record, it ends at contact. Either way, the text presses beyond the reach of empire and beyond the categories of modern thought. They don't want you to know that the biblical prophets describe abductions, and that the abductors, enthroned above wheels within wheels, were the very beings the ancient world called gods. And they are the biblical Elohim. They are the biblical gods. They are the Anunnaki. If you like the video, hit the like button and share it with your friends and family who might be interested in the topic. See you in the next video.